Thank you for joining. I'm Linda Nseke. I'm the director for New Technology Venture Initiative and Engagement. So I'm happy to introduce our presenter for today. And first, let me tell you a little bit about what we do at the Center for Technology Licensing. So first, Technology for Technology Licensing. It's an office where we manage the IP at Cornell, and we support the commercialization of new innovation, new discovery coming out of the lab at Cornell. And our mission is first to catalyze the new technology and those technology and to commercialize it, but also to promote new venture. And it's through this second mission that we offer this New Venture Series, who's here to support the education, but also support the development of new entrepreneur and new also startup. And we have 4 pillars at CTL. The first one is the gap funding that we have and different programs to support the gap funding. It helps accelerate technology, support new venture, but also train new entrepreneurs. The second one that is very important and the core of our mission, the technology licensing and IP, where we manage the IP, we support the innovator, but also we do a lot of marketing of the technology and licensing. And the third one is a technology startup, and I will talk. Will have a link in the second slide about the fast track to move forward faster in having a license with us, and also developing a network of startup of investor like OUP and with Kirsten that we have today. And also supporting the ecosystem, the entrepreneurial, but also the innovation ecosystem. The last one, not the least, because it's one of the activity we do today, it's the education, it's the outreach, where we have a lot of programming to support New Venture Series, but also IP series and other programming, educational programming to inform about what we do, but also what is mean IP, what is entail, but also what is mean startup creation when it comes to an academic venture. And we have a lot of programming as well to support student education, like the CTL Practicum, and we hold a lot of internal, in-person, even external event, but also online. I wanted to share quickly here the chart that shows the exponential growth of the number of startups created to show that we are pushing more and more the development of new startups coming out of the lab at Cornell, and we are developing new initiatives to support more development of startup. Here for fiscal year 2023, we had helped form 10 startups, IP-based startups. And from Cornell Tech, they have helped develop 5 from the Cornell Tech one startup. And among all the startups, particularly those with IP base, they have raised during fiscal year 2023 more than 400 million in equity and grant and also other vehicles. And during the last 5 years period, they have raised cumulative of 2 billion. Here's just some of the initiatives that we have at our office to support the new venture, and we'll share this slide so you have the link of those initiatives. First, the Ignite Fellow, and I have another slide with more details, and we'll share more details with you in the upcoming info session. The Ignite Fellow to support the development of entrepreneurs and for them to co-develop a startup based on the IP at Cornell. And the fast track is the express license with transparent terms for you to know what you have, and also it's simple terms for everybody to understand and to be able to negotiate quickly a license with us. The Ignite Startup is another program for the Ignite series, and also a startup newsletter that we're putting in place to highlight the startup that are fundraising, so we can share with the community of investors that we have. And also we are doing introduction to select investor such as OUP, Osage, University Partner. And we are offering also a lot of outreach and programming, such as Ignite Connect, Ignite Showcase. We have also special invitation to select startup to JP Morgan. We are organizing satellite event and other event to support and also showcase our startup in fundraising mode. So all that are some example of activity that we do to support first the new venture creation, but also startup already running at Cornell. And we'll share this slide, but we have a full details of what is the Ignite Gap Funding Program. We'll have info session to talk more about the Ignite, particularly Ignite Fellow for those interested with creating a new venture. So now let's start with what we are here today. We are here to talk about pitching 101. So how to present your startup and technology innovation to potential founder, such as you have here Kirsten Leute. She's partner at university. She's partner and at OUP, and she's in charge of the university relation. So Kirsten has a lot of knowledge, a lot of history, also in tech transfer. So it's been 19 years. Is that correct, Kirsten?
Yeah, right.
So it's impressive. 19 years of experience. So we are very lucky to have her today. She will be presenting Pitching 101. We are working closely with her and with her group. Her role particularly is to work closely with university and Osage. It's an investment firm that works particularly with academic faculty member and startups. They are investing particularly in academic startups, and they are working closely with university. And I believe you are working with more than 100 universities across the US. It's a lot. So you have a lot of knowledge in the successful startup arising from university. So it's why we are happy to have you here presenting Pitching 101 and how to leverage and develop a pitch to talk with an investor like Osage University Partners. So back to you, Kirsten. Thank you for being here.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. And I was very impressed with the graph with the startups on it, the line. That was really interesting to see. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now with the deck, and let me just put that into presentation mode. This is a deck actually that we developed, and I just want to make sure you guys are seeing the right screen here, the correct one. Yes, okay. This is a deck actually we developed a couple of years ago. We do a lot of webinars about the startup process, especially out of academic institutions. And so we developed this particular deck because we get a lot of questions from people about how to pitch. And so, pitching is not a one-size-fits-all thing. You have to be thinking about who it is that you're pitching to. And that's kind of where we're going to start off the conversation today, is about investors and approaching investors. As you likely know, and actually, I apologize. I'm going to pause for a second. I love questions. I would much rather this be a conversation and for you to ask questions along the way than for me to be spewing information the entire time. So please do put questions into, I think it's the chat here, and Chris and Linda can ask those of me if I don't happen to see them pop up when you have them. We do have a recording of this particular talk from two of our investors when we first developed it a couple of years ago. So I'm also happy to send that to you afterwards as well, because we're not going to get through, I think, every single little piece of information on this. Plus, I'm sure that there will be other things that they said that'll be in addition to what I say. So with that, going back into the deck itself. So when you're thinking about how it is that you're going to pitch what it is that your potential is, you have to think about who it is that you're potentially pitching to. And so this is a chart that we use a lot in our presentations for people to just think about academic startups and their possible funding sources. So obviously you all are very familiar with the grants part of this, where things are being initially perhaps developed, illuminating technology comes out potentially of these grants, and that's the first step. Now, there also in here are probably grants that can help you get to these next steps from the government, such as the SBIRs and STTRs, and I imagine that you've had trainings or can receive trainings on SBIR and STTR grants and other, there's PVF, there's a whole bunch of these that you can potentially have from the government that will help you more in these proof of concept funding stages. So you're familiar with that. Then there's potentially getting funding from friends and family. This is usually when you're, before you're actually a fully fledged funded startup. It may be usually in the tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars that you're raising here. You're doing this in order to get these next perhaps critical steps that you need with your startup. There may be a variety of things that you need at this stage, such as incorporation, finding space, some initial experiments that you're going to run, etc. We have a whole webinar on friends and family funding if you have any questions about this, where we interviewed attorneys about friends and family and funding and how that works, as well as had a couple of startups on talking about their friends and family rounds. So that information is out there for you too. Then we're moving up to kind of the proof of concept funding stage for startups. You're talking about your angels and accelerators here, or your venture philanthropy. Here you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars that the company is raising to low millions of dollars that the company is raising. We also have other webinars on angel and accelerators, so we're not going to go too much to that. But we're mainly going to be talking about pitching to venture capital groups today. So I just wanted to go through this to have you understand when we're talking about a pitch deck, we're usually talking about when you're going to a venture capital organization to receive funding. And venture capital, just I'm going to mention this ahead of time, venture capital is not the route that all startups should necessarily go in. Venture capital is expensive for companies in some ways. You are giving up a chunk of equity in order to receive venture capital. And that's usually that you're going to be raising millions, tens of millions, maybe even hundreds of millions of dollars, because you're doing something to take your potential product to large next steps. And so when you're thinking about how you're pitching and who you're pitching to, you need to think about what kind of funding it is that I'm looking for, and therefore what kind of pitch am I going to make and who I'm pitching to. So let's talk a little bit about venture capital funding by the numbers. I already mentioned this, that the majority of startups do not necessarily need venture funding, and especially not initially. Always good to stay with grant or non-dilutive funding as much as possible in those early stages, but there may be good reasons why you want to move on to venture capital funding in addition to the large amounts of capital that it provides. It could be the network they provide, it could be a device, it could be they are a company formation fund and help provide some initial management of the company, help you think about the potential product that you're developing, et cetera. There's maybe things in addition to that funding that you're looking for from a particular fund. VCs do look at hundreds of businesses for each one that they actually invest in. So be thinking about that as you're developing your pitch deck and what it is that you want to say. Just an example from our side is that we're currently tracking about 10,000 active companies between all of those university relationships that Linda mentioned a little bit ago. And in our current fund, which is our fourth fund, we'll make around investments in 40 different companies in that fund. And that counts for, an acceptance rate of, much less than 1% of those that we're looking at. And, this is how it works with VCs, is they look at a ton of opportunities, but invest in very few. So we're going to be talking about the elements that go into your making that pitch to that VC to hopefully get to those next levels of possible funding. Your initial interaction and pitch deck, you want to have a great initial interaction so you get to the next call. It's never going to be one call and you're going to get the funding with VCs. If it is, there you may be concerned. So you do want to have a great initial impression with them. You don't necessarily have to have a warm introduction, but it can be very helpful to have a warm introduction to someone who knows this particular investor. For the initial interaction, which is probably going to be a phone call or a Zoom initially, make it clear, concise, and compelling. Talk about who it is that you are, your background, what it is that you bring to the table with regards to this opportunity, maybe who else you're planning to bring to the table for the opportunity to kind of fill out the roles. The data behind why you're so enthusiastic about your opportunity and how much you're committing to this opportunity. People want, your investors want to see this kind of commitment to it. Why the data itself is compelling. And then you need to talk about market. So having a wonderful technology is one thing, but it all comes down to the value that you're creating in your company towards the product that is going to be sold or service or whatever it is. So what is the addressable market that your opportunity can actually pursue? And how are you going to potentially get there? You're going to want to mention your current funding so far and the accomplishments to date, and then how you're actually going to use the funding that you're currently seeking. You're going to probably have a dollar amount in mind that you're seeking, and then have a timeline about how that funding would be used to get you to your next inflection point and your next fundraise. So we're going to talk more about each of those elements as we go along here, but that's that initial interaction. You want to, when you're pitching, you want to play to your strengths, and potentially you could have both the scientist who's associated with this on, as well as perhaps an entrepreneur. Maybe a combination of those two of those who are pitching. And if you do that, be very cognizant that those who you're pitching to are going to look at that interaction and see how you're interacting with each other and whether you complement each other or if there's friction at all associated with that. So the entrepreneur is usually the lead with the team, has some product development experience, knows how to potentially take this to market, and therefore they have an idea of the fundraising that is needed and how the value is going to be created for this particular company. That's complemented with then perhaps the scientists, and sometimes these can be the same person, not always, and I would say not incredibly often. You want these complements with each other. The scientist is going to be very focused on the scientific part of the presentation, putting in lots of data behind why it is they think this is achievable. If you look at the investors who are on our team, we invest in deep science out of academic institutions. Our investors, almost all of them have science backgrounds. Most of them have PhDs. They may not be an expert, though, in your particular area, so you're going to want to help them, educate them on that. But they do usually have generally a good inkling about data, how people arrive at that data, et cetera. Then you're going to talk about the product opportunities. What can this particular technology address? And therefore, what products could potentially be put out for it? And then you talk about your next steps from a research and development timeline and the milestones that you're looking to achieve. So this marrying of the two people perhaps on this call, there may be a third person that you would have on the call as well, is very important. And you don't necessarily need to have each one of these people, but we do find it to be useful at times. The next thing I'm going to mention is just some things to think about as you are raising capital. This is actually taken from, I think, a Life Science VC blog, and we just thought they were very important points to get across as you're looking at raising capital for your startup, is that you need to think about the people, the VCs that you're targeting to receive capital from, look at the sectors that they're interested in, what stage they invest in, where they're at in their fund cycle is really important as well. So have that information before you pitch to a particular VC. Fundraising in general is a very challenging, grueling endeavor. And so do not go into it lightly. Know that you're going to have a lot of no's, and far more often than you're going to have yeses from VCs. And it may seem that they're offhandedly just saying no, but they're looking at, how does this fit with our portfolio? How does this fit with our fund size? How does this fit with where we want things to exit? So there's a whole host of factors going behind why VCs are saying no. It may not be, no, we don't like your opportunity. It may be like, this doesn't fit where we're at right now. Okay. And you can always ask, well, so are there others you think could be interested? Would you have recommendations of who those are as well? Early stage technologies, which I imagine a lot of you are associated with, often represent new stories, and that can be really compelling to VCs. So emphasize that. As I mentioned before, you're going to need multiple meetings in order to come to an investment decision from a company, from a venture firm. We do like to just put this in. Private placement agents are out there and available potentially to help you with your fundraise. We don't typically, actually, that's not the route that almost any of our investments come through. I think I'm trying to think if any did. But it's usually they're more associated with later stage companies that are truly too busy to go out and do those initial connections themselves. But most investors are going to want to have that initial connection come through the company themselves and those who are running it. So, any questions so far? No? All right, thank you. All right, well, so if there are any, please let me know. So just to let you know, I'm going to go through the next two slides somewhat quickly, but VCs, I mentioned that VCs do invest potentially in different stages, and this changes over time, and it changes over the funds that they raise. So when VCs go out and raise money, they go out with a fund thesis that they are then selling to the limited partners who invest in their fund. And so when they're going out, they're saying, hey, we want to raise a fund for this thesis, and therefore we're going to be targeting companies in this spectrum at this stage, et cetera. And so do your homework. It's very, very important to do your homework on investors before you pitch with them. And so this slide, I think, is a few years old now. So it may be totally wrong for these particular investors. I'm just going to put that out there. But when we created this, it was right, that Atlas Ventures was at that time only doing therapeutics. They were doing company formation and early preclinical stage. And I think that's actually similar to what it is that where they initially invest in the companies. But do your homework on investors. OUP, we do company formation, but very rarely. So we're more of a syndicate investor. And so that's something to know about us as well. We're more commonly a syndicate investor. And we invest anywhere from company formation to pre-IPO. Not all investors do that as well. As I mentioned, over time, investors may change their focus. So there were some investors who were more late stage investors before, but potentially have been moving earlier now, investing in companies. So do your homework on the companies that potentially could be investing in you. And so we created the same slide for the tech industry as well. There are, and I didn't mention this on the last slide, but there are a number of strategic investors from companies who have venture capital arms who are also looking to invest in startups out of academic institutions. And so don't forget that you got your kind of traditional venture capital groups who raise these funds from LPs. You also have these strategic investors who have capital that they've set aside internally to look at venture investment as well. That is going to be strategically interesting to them as a company as well. So don't forget, perhaps, the technology wasn't licensed initially to, some large company, but they actually could be a possible investor in your startup company. And I would say that, so because I've been doing this for so long, as Linda mentioned, I started in the industry back in the 1990s. And I remember there was this shift then from companies from doing so much of the R&D internally to saying, you know what, maybe we should let startups do more of this kind of very risky work associated with these technologies and let them develop it. And we can work with them on that, but we don't have to necessarily always have the huge labs and doing all this initial R&D ourselves. So, all right, with that, I'm going to go into a couple of slides that one of the people on our investment team had put together with regards to framework for evaluating an investment opportunity that he's particularly likes. And it was taken from this former DARPA director. And he likes to, even though this framework was developed for technical proposals, he actually really likes it for you when you're thinking about the pitch deck and what it is that you're putting together. And one of the things that he says on this is that, like he may be an expert in certain areas, but he's not necessarily an expert in every area. So typically try to avoid using a lot of jargon in your particular pitch deck because the investor may not know that particular jargon. So be concise and clear about what it is that you're talking about. Talk about how the issue, the indication, et cetera, what is done about it today and the limits of the current practice. What's new in your particular approach and why do you think this is the right approach people should take and why it would be successful? Talk about who's going to care about this. Who is your audience potentially for this product down the line? Is it doctors? Is it patients? Is it consumers? Is it, whoever it is? Why are these people going to care about this and what difference is it going to make for them? You do want to not avoid the risks. If you don't mention any risks, they're going to wonder, well, do they not really understand how product development is done and what the possibilities are of what could go wrong? You want to understand what are the possible failure points? How are you going to address those? How much is it going to cost to actually take this and develop it in a product? So you want to know how much it's going to cost potentially to get to your next inflection point, but also how much it's going to take actually to get to the point of product, to the point of potential exit. When you're thinking like an investor is always thinking, okay, if I invest my money now, I want to know when I could possibly exit and what my possible multiple would be. So you need to think like the investor is thinking at the same time. So talking about those costs, that's where you're kind of going with those numbers about. And then how long it will take, we already talked about that. And what are kind of the points that you're going to be checking? Hey, are we meeting our goals? Is this working, et cetera? People are going to want to see that as well. Investors often invest, maybe commit for a round, but the round may be divvied up into tranches. And they will call on the tranches once they've gotten to a certain inflection point that was met based on the goals that they had had. So I see we have a question, Linda.
Yes. We have a question from Bruce. Can you talk a little bit more about the jargon? Do you mean avoiding corporate PR speak like synergy, or are you talking about avoiding technical science terms?
Well, so it's actually, so for me, it's both. Like, so you don't, you want to be specific and clear and concise. And so, so there's that aspect that kind of addresses the first aspect of what was asked. But you also, if you are using a really specific technical term that you think maybe not everyone knows who's not an expert in the field, explain that. So both of those. So make sure your audience understands what it is that you're talking about. But from the first aspect of that, you don't want to sound like you're selling what everyone else is selling, right? You want to sound like you're selling something that is unique and compelling. So did that answer the question, hopefully? All right, do you have other questions?
No, I don't see any additional question, but Bruce, I guess Kirsten answer your question. Is that right? I guess yes.
Okay. All right. Well, let me know if not. I'm happy to go back. All right. So general pitching guidelines, and I talked a little bit about some of these on the previous slide, but think about, and one of the things you're going to do with pitching is you're going to practice pitch a lot before you give your pitch to investors. And you're going to want to practice pitch with advisors, with trusted friends, colleagues who've done this before, with your tech transfer office, new ventures office, whoever it is, and preempt any killer questions. Have them come up with the questions that they think are going to be the ones that the investors would be coming to you with, so that if they aren't addressed in your slides, that you're able to answer them. Or if you're not able to answer them, like you don't have an answer for it, don't make something up. Say, hey, I don't know the answer to that, but I know where to find it. So let me come back to you. I'll get back to you tomorrow with an email on that, or I'm happy to schedule another call about that or something to that effect. So we do like to have the pitch decks sent in advance. Some people worry about them getting stuck in filters, et cetera. For us, it's really helpful to kind of see and actually be able to think about those questions beforehand. So we do like to receive them in advance. We do like to have the slides just to be visually interesting, to keep us engaged with what it is that you're presenting. Use text sparingly, but enough that so we can interpret the slide without the presenter, because you may be pitching to one person initially, but they may be then providing that deck to some other people on the team for them to view. So there's kind of this balance between not putting too much on a slide, but then having enough that it can be interpreted without the presenter. I talked a lot already about being clear, concise, and compelling. Keep the pitch brief, about 15 slides maybe initially, and then you can have additional details in appendix slides. So if a killer question comes up, you may have a slide that you can jump to in your appendix to say, you know what, that's not in my my slides I was planning on presenting, but I do have a slide on this, and let me jump to that. Pause to allow for questions. Hopefully I've been doing an okay job of that so far, but just trying to exemplify, it is really important to ask along the way if there are questions. We already talked about if you don't know an answer, just say so and figure out how you're going to then follow up with it. Don't hide anything substantive. It won't stay hidden for long. And part of what you're trying to do is build trust with a group that you would like to potentially work with for a long time. And so start that trust building very early. VCs really want to see trust built up in the relationships that they have. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, there's an additional question. So how important is brand identity and graphic design when it comes to a pitch deck in relation to visually interesting?
Yeah, so it's important. You want a slide deck that it doesn't have to be too fancy, right? Like you don't have to go out and spend thousands and thousands of dollars on your initial pitch deck. But use the designer mode, in PowerPoint. Use some things that really make it your eye drawn to it. Don't make it, like this slide, I would say, is like one of the least interesting slides we have in this deck. I don't love like how this slide, but so don't just make it necessarily bullet points always like we have here. But like the previous slide, try to include a visual or include something that just makes it more appealing to the eye. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
It looks like there's some more questions or.
So I believe Martin is saying yes. Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you, Luke, for the question.
Right. Okay, and then the last one was, I think we already talked about this, don't make unsubstantiated claims or statements. Sooner or later, you will need to back them up. So you really, like, again, this is part of the trust thing, is the investors want to believe and share your vision. Okay. All right, so now we're going to move on to the elements of a pitch deck, unless there are any other questions. And I know we only have just over 20 minutes left, so, but we'll get through these. And through the next, we're going to talk about each one of these elements over the next slides. So I'm not going to go into each one of these here, but we are going to have slides.
Kirsten?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't realize we have another question from
Okay.
Luke. So what is your opinion on paying upfront administrative fee in order to pitch to angel investor network?
To pay a fee to pitch to someone?
Yes, to angel investor network. It's the first time I hear that, but perhaps Luke, do you want to elaborate?
I don't know about that. Like maybe I'm just not familiar. But
So Martin, it's not Martin, sorry. Luke, do you want to elaborate? And perhaps we can come back to the question later. Perhaps let's continue and
yeah, and I'll just say I'm not, like, for me, I haven't encountered, and maybe it's just I don't know enough, but I haven't encountered where you would pay a fee to pitch to people.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Yeah, sure. Okay. So introduction slide. The introduction slide should be basically your elevator pitch. I'm sure you probably heard that term before, but you're going to be talking about what the problem is and what your solution is. Give a very clear expression of your mission. So this is one that we had from a particular pitch deck from a company we invested in called Corelight. So their goal, it was a safer internet. And then it talked about the challenge, and that they would use real-time data to detect, to understand, and to prevent breaches. So goal, safer internet, and how they would do so. And then, so we have other examples of clear expression of mission here. On the life sciences side, so this was some tech example. On the life sciences side, you may want to focus on the background of the technology and cover some key points of the data, outline the current status of the program and where it's at in the development process, and then the ask for the VC. So there's different ways to approach your intro slide, but that's what you're trying to do, is like you're trying to provide a really compelling statement of what it is that you're going to do and the problem you're addressing. From there, so people put the leadership slide in different points of the deck. Oh, and I'm sorry, it looks like there's another question. Should I pause for the?
So it's a comment from Bruce, who said that it's pitching to angel investor network, which do sometimes ask for fee.
Okay. I'm not as familiar with angel investor networks, so yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm sorry, I don't have an answer to that question. I can ask our investment team though and see what they say.
Thank you, Kirsten.
Yeah. So leadership slide can go in different parts of the deck. We like to see it early on in the deck because a lot of what we're focusing on when we look at the investment is the team that is going to be involved with this particular opportunity. And so we like to see who they are and the backgrounds of them. And how they've worked together before, what each member is bringing to the team, how, again, I like that word complement a lot, obviously how they complement each other, And then if there are positions that you know are missing, talk about who's not on the team yet and who you are looking to hire and how that's going to supplement this team there is. You want to talk about the companies they've been involved with, the domain expertise that they have, whether they've been in VC-backed companies before, their involvement perhaps in attaining VC funding, taking that product to the market using VC funding, or where they got to with the funding itself. And if you only have scientific founders, focus on their academic and clinical background that's really relevant to this technology and why that's going to be so important to the opportunity. You want to be very upfront about the team it is that you have right now, but also that maybe the team that you envision for the future. That may be part of your ask, as we talked about for the investors, is like, we're looking to build a team like this, and we understand that you're a VC firm that can help us get there, which is one of the reasons that we're interested in talking with you. So we really like great team slides. These are not the most diverse team slides. We have a lot more that are, but those are the ones that ended up on this particular slide.
So, Kirsten,
Yes.
there's a question, but perhaps you want to address that at the end, since it's a different topics, and I know you have a different sometime webinar about it. It's about valuation. Yes. The question is coming from Michael. Michael is asking, what are the best way to address valuation with a VC? Do you suggest proposing a pre-money valuation or leave it and to be determined, negotiated? And another question is also, what is your ideal or preferred instrument for the company and for the VC as well to use for the round where valuation is hard to determine? Safe, convertible note, preferred equity.
Right. So we invest in priced rounds. So we're typically not investing in SAFEs, convertible notes, et cetera. So there is a valuation that is, we do have a whole webinar on valuations. We always say it's an art, not a science. Obviously, you're looking at valuations of other companies, similar stages, similar indications that perhaps that they're pursuing. You're thinking about what it is that they've done so far. But we do have a whole webinar on that. So I'm happy, Linda, I'll send the link to you for that so that people can view it afterwards. Valuation, the company may have an idea of the valuation. If they find when they go out and they're raising the round and they have said this is the valuation and people aren't biting, they may be getting feedback. That valuation is too high for us. And so it ends up sometimes being part of a conversation. And then if there is a term sheet that is issued, that valuation from a VC, the valuation will be a part of that term sheet. So I just advise, I think it's better for us to perhaps finish this, but we do have a webinar on that as well. So we'll send that around.
Thank you. And I can share the link because I know I have watched a couple of those webinars, so I can share that on the chat.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Okay, so market opportunity. You want to talk about the scope and scale of what it is that you're solving. So go into specifics on numbers here about that, but also descriptions of it. You want to talk about the total market size, but also the addressable market. Like so I often find this in presentations where someone says the total market is, this billions of dollars. But as they're talking, I'm realizing they're addressing a very small part of that market. And so I need to be able to link it. So maybe the total market size really isn't something that is an important part of this presentation, unless it's something that you think you can get to through further, product developments or et cetera, down the line. So be really specific about what it is that you can actually address. And then your possible revenue towards that. And so it was mentioned here, try to break down the market into the highest resolution that you can back up with data. Again, people are going to look into the numbers themselves and really see, they're going to try to verify, is this data correct on what this possibly could address and what the market size is. And then we have another slide on market opportunity. And this part of the reason that you want to have something on this is because this is a question that the VCs are always asking themselves is why now? Why is this the right opportunity to invest in right now? Why is this the right round to invest in also for us, where the VCs are thinking about this? Is like, should we wait till the next round? Should we do this now? Why is this a good opportunity for us right now? But the market opportunity question of why now is why this is working, why this actually is going to be a great investment right now. Why hasn't it been done before? It may just be purely technical. It wasn't technically achievable before. Why is this actually going to work now? Perhaps it didn't work in the past. Are there business models now that will work for this particular opportunity? This is more on the tech side here. We always try to have a tech and a life sciences example on these slides. For the life sciences side, you going back to that addressable market versus the market that you're actually pursuing, you want to understand that you're getting some kind of piece of the market. It may be a small piece, but it may be still a very large piece in the overall, dollar-wise, because the market is so huge, and that's okay as well. And then you want to focus on, you may be in life sciences, there may be an additional an initial application that you're going after, but there may be additional applications, indications that you can pursue after that. So once you get first product approval for an indication, sometimes getting that next product approval can be much easier because you've already got all your safety trials, et cetera, done. Now you're just going after the data that it actually can be helpful for a particular indication. So also on the market opportunity, you're going to be wanting to describe the problem itself. So you want your investors to understand the issues that are behind it, show them where there's friction, and then show them why you solve those friction points. And so we have two examples here from different companies that we have invested in before. We only have 10 minutes left, so I'm not going to go into the specific examples, but you're happy to look at these. But we like both of these because they look at, they tell you exactly what the problem is and where this solution comes in to help that problem. Okay, so your solution is next up. So you've talked about the problem. You're going to talk now about your solution. So you can see actually going from the previous slide, this is a company we invested in. I think it's Garden, yeah. So they're showing the problem, and then they show this nice slide where they talk about how their solution will address this particular problem. You want to talk about who's actually benefiting from this solution as well. We talked a little bit about that before. So who realizes the value of it, and put in numbers again. We like to see those numbers about why we should be compelled and interested in this. So Linda, do we have another question? I saw something else I think come in.
No, I was sharing the webinar.
Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you. All right. So then you're going to talk about data, why this can work. We talked before that the investors at our firm, they're scientists by background. They like to have data, and you want to share your excitement. Like, it was this that made us say, oh my goodness, we can do this. And here is why. So this was our aha moment. And then you want to talk about what it is that you're going to be able to do next to further validate, to further get to a point of product or service or whatever it is. And so then you're going to talk about the next steps that you'll be able to do once you secure financing that'll get it to the next inflection point. So you're going to want then to have a roadmap of the development and how the milestones will actually be achieved in the timeline of that. And as we talked about, thinking about those inflection point, and therefore then how potentially you would be making money. So talk about how you're going to get to market. On the technical, on the tech side, the physical sciences side, are you going to be selling directly? Are you going to be using channels? Are you going to have a to different, to your particular type of business model? For the life sciences side, you're going to be thinking about this from a regulatory standpoint and also a reimbursement standpoint. You're going to want to, so each of these shows like what the possible revenues are. You're just going to want some kind of scale on here that talks about what the possibilities are for making money down the line. All right. Competition is the next part, but Linda, I think do we have some other questions that have come in?
No, it's information about the link and
okay, great.
Yeah.
Terrific. All right, so competition slides. Important to have a competition slide and be talking about who else is out there, what it is they're doing, and what differentiates. I'm sure, actually, if you're doing a startup and you've taken any startup courses so far, you have heard about the competition slides. And you want to make sure you put the major competition on there. You don't want a VC coming back and saying, well, what about this competitor? And you don't know about them, right? So make sure you've done your homework again and put your competitor on there. It's very common to see, these kinds of slides where you talk about, all of the reasons that you potentially are going to win, in this technology category versus your competitors out there. It also may show, some possible acquirers eventually of your company as well in these cases, and saying, you know what, these stalwarts in the industry, they do this, but if they adopted our solution, that could help them, and this is why that could be interesting. So. And the one thing, and actually this is one other thing I was going to mention on this is that if you only talk about how great everything is for you and like why you're leaps and bounds ahead in this slide, it's going to seem disingenuous. Like you need to talk about your obstacles still, because otherwise it's going to be like, well, why isn't everyone else doing this? Or, what's missing? So be also very cognizant that your own approach is going to have obstacles. This is another competition slide that we had, for a life sciences opportunity. And I'm going to move along since we only have a few minutes left. You want to show your operation plans and your milestones that you're going to achieve. You're going to want some kind of Gantt chart in there showing what you're going to do and the money that you're going to need and how you're going to get there. So this one very nicely shows, hey, we're raising a series A1, 6 million. That's going to get us to here. This is potentially, the next tranche of the series A will be used for these opportunities. So have charts like that. You're also going to have charts with regards to your financing strategy then and where that's going to get you as well. So you're going to want a last slide that is going to be somewhat analogous to your first slide, which is the summary and vision. Again, you're trying to be a salesperson here, saying, hey, we would really like to work with you as an investor. Here's why. We think our opportunity could be of interest to you. Here is where we think we're going to be in the next several years. We'd like you to be with us along this journey. Then ask for feedback. Part of this is not just, you're making a pitch to potentially get funding, but you want their feedback because you're going to be learning along this process. As we said, you're going to do this many times in order to receive funding from investors. you want to learn along the way. And then, talk about what would be the next step for you. What other information would you like at this point? And talk about what it is that you view as your next steps, obviously, as a company as well. So with that, so those were just some potential slides for that last deck part that you're going to have in your deck. But with that, we talked about some of this throughout the presentation. But what we really like to see is a great team pitching to us, knowing their strengths, where they can work, where they work well together, where they each have their individual expertise. We want to show the strength of the team in that interaction, but also in the deck. We want to be like excited to sign on to your vision, what it is for that science and for that potential product or service or whatever it is down the line, and why this is going to be of interest to us. So why is this going to potentially provide us, a multiple on our money in a certain time period that is going to be compelling to us as investors? So, and then as you're pitching, there's we have a whole deck on also on what we're looking for to invest in as far as people. But there's a balance between passion and enthusiasm and ego, as well as modesty and listening and willing to take advice from investors. And so you need to think about what your strengths are and where you're looking for people to be able to help you. Always go around and be looking at the people that you're talking with and reading the room and see, hey, am I losing people? Maybe I need to move on to the next point. What can I do to draw them back again? What have they been interested in so far? They seem particularly, their interest is piqued, when I talk about this. So keep reading the room. So I'm going to stop there because we are almost at time. Linda, any other questions?
Yes, we do have some question. Okay.
So you want to go? I can go back to the deck because there's a question.
Exactly. It's to share the deck and so
Okay.
yes, we'll share the deck and the recording.
Yes.
I do have a question for you, Kirsten. And one is which word or which sentence you don't like to hear from those who pitch to you?
Which sentence don't I like to hear?
Yeah, sometimes I know that you have some word that is often used because sometimes it's trendy. What do you other? Do you have some word, keyword, or some that is often used that
I wouldn't say so. It's not a keyword that's coming to mind. But what I want is for people to be specific. So if you just tell me, this is, the main area everyone's going to look at for the next 5 years, and everyone's investing in AI, and everyone's, I want you to be specific about what it is why, my dollars into your deal is going to make me dollars for my investors. So it's just, to me, it's about being specific, but like that question it's a good one. There's nothing that's coming to mind. Maybe I should have an answer to that one in the future though.
No problem. And Oli is asking, so is feedback different from question? How do you ask them for both?
Oh, so at the end of the presentation, perhaps what I would do is say, are there any questions? And if there aren't any questions right now, so pause, right? And then, say, if there aren't any questions right now, I'm really happy to follow up with any that may come up with you, in the next days as you consider this. I'm also really open to any feedback that you have on that presentation. You could ask for it right then. And, or if there's anything that was missing that you would have liked to have seen in the presentation, or like if there's something that you're specifically looking for feedback on, ask them. You can also do that in your follow-up email and say, hey, I was thinking about, something that you said on this. I'd love your feedback on da 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 da. So I would just be specific, like, is there feedback that you're particularly looking for? Or if you generally are, if it's, especially if you're, early pitching, particularly, when you're pitching, I think angels and accelerators, et cetera, like part of their work is to help people with their pitching too, is to ask them specifically about that as well. So hopefully that's helpful. But and like, just like you asked me for that advice, go ahead and ask those, especially those early partners that we talked about with who are going to give you that initial feedback on your deck. Ask them as well.
Great, thank you. I will concur with one of the participants mentioned. Excellent presentation. Thank you, Kirsten. As usual, very insightful. If there is any follow-up question, we'll share with you and try to get answers. But thank you very much for attending. And Kirsten, thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and appreciate you all being here. All right. Bye, Linda.
Thank you very much. Bye. And
Bye.
stay tuned for the next New Venture series. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good afternoon.